Stay calm and walk with me like there's nothing wrong." The port security officer spoke so quietly I almost missed it over the noise of the crowd. He gripped my elbow firmly, steering me away from the boarding line, his eyes fixed straight ahead. "I have reason to believe you are in serious danger on this ship." I almost laughed. I was 63 years old, a retired firefighter from Chicago, and I was standing at the port of Miami about to board a 7-night Caribbean cruise I had been dreaming about for over a decade. The only danger I had been expecting was whether I would eat myself into a coma at the buffet. But the officer was not laughing, and the look on his face told me I should not be either. "Comment where you're watching from right now and tell me what time it is, because at 9 in the morning in Miami, Florida, I thought I was just beginning the rest of my life." I had no idea. My life was exactly what someone was trying to end. My name is Walter, and I spent 31 years running into burning buildings to save strangers. I survived 3 flashovers, a collapsed roof, and a structural explosion that took 2 of my brothers in the department. I thought I understood danger. I thought I knew what fear felt like. I had no idea. 8 months ago, my wife Dorothy passed away in the night. A stroke, the doctors said, quiet and fast. She was 59 years old. She had just planted tulip bulbs in the backyard the afternoon before. I found her in the morning still in her reading chair with her glasses on and a book open in her lap, and I understood then that the ground could simply open beneath your feet without any warning at all. Dorothy never got to see me retire. She had been the one to circle that cruise on a travel magazine and tape it to the refrigerator door. "The Caribbean," she had said, running her finger across the glossy photo of turquoise water. "Walter, that's where we're going the day you hand in your badge." She had said it so many times over so many years that it became less of a dream and more of a fact. The way a promissory note feels more real than cash. So I decided to go anyway, not to outrun the grief, just to honor the woman who had made me want to live differently. I had my pension, the paid-off house in Oak Park, and a life insurance policy that made me more comfortable than I had any right to be after working-class parents and a union salary. Dorothy and I had never had children of our own. What we had instead were my nephews. My older nephew Marcus was 35. He had his mother's sharp eyes and my late father's wide shoulders. I had watched him grow from a skinny kid with a gap-toothed smile into a man I thought I could be proud of. My younger nephew Dion was 32, quieter, more careful, always watching a room before he entered it. After my sister Clara had her first cardiac episode 14 years ago, the boys had come to live with Dorothy and me. We raised them through high school, through college applications, through every hard year that followed. I thought of them as my own. Clara was still alive. That was something I held on to. She was 61 now, living in a care facility in Evanston after her second heart surgery 2 years ago. Our relationship had grown complicated in recent years. The boys had told me she was angry with me over the inheritance arrangements Dorothy and I had made. I had not called her in 6 months. I regret that now in a way that reaches down to the bottom of me. So there I was, in line, at the port of Miami, my cruise bag over one shoulder, both nephews behind me with their rolling luggage, talking and laughing and taking pictures of the enormous white ship waiting in the harbor. Marcus had organized the whole trip. It was his idea to mark my retirement this way. He had handled the bookings, the cabin assignments, everything. He had been warmer to me in the past 3 months than he had been in years, and I had let that warmth fool me because grief makes you want warmth wherever you can find it. The officer led me through a side door marked Port Authority personnel only and into a small windowless room with fluorescent lighting and a metal table. He introduced himself as Officer James Reyes, Maritime Security, working in coordination with federal agents who had been watching my nephews for the past 11 days. "Mr. Walter," he said, "I am going to show you something that is going to be hard to look at, but I need you to look at it anyway." He turned a laptop toward me. Security camera footage from the ticketing and check-in area, time-stamped 2 days prior. My nephew Marcus was on the screen, standing in a corner of the terminal, a phone to his ear. The audio was not great, but Officer Reyes had already had it enhanced. He pressed play. I heard my nephew's voice say, "It has to look like he went overboard. Drunk old man on a cruise. Nobody questions that. We need everything transferred before the lawyers start asking." If we wait much longer, he could change the will again. Then my younger nephew's voice, quieter, more reluctant. Marcus, he's our uncle. He raised us. A pause. And then Marcus said, he didn't do it for free, did he? Now stop being soft. The payout is almost $4 million between the policy and the house. That is our money. We earned that. I sat back in my chair. I had bought that life insurance policy with Dorothy 15 years ago. I had updated my estate documents 8 months ago after she passed, and both nephews were named primary beneficiaries because I had no one else. I had done it out of love, out of obligation, out of the belief that taking care of family is the thing a man does when he has been given more than he expected out of life. My wife had not believed that. Dorothy had sat across from me at the kitchen table the night I updated those documents, and she had looked at me with that particular expression she reserved for when she was choosing her words carefully. Walter, she had said, Marcus has borrowed $40,000 from us in 4 years. We have never seen a single payment. Dion follows whatever his brother tells him to do. I love those boys, but something in the way Marcus looks at your finances is not the way a nephew looks. It's the way a creditor looks. I had told her she was being uncharitable. She had said, I hope I'm wrong. I genuinely do. She was not wrong. Officer Reyes continued. We have been monitoring communications between your nephew Marcus and an associate connected to a private lending group in Atlanta. He owes them approximately $800,000. High-risk investment loans, some of it offshore. The debt has been called in. Your nephew has been told he has 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And I had 7 nights at sea. Is the plan to push me overboard, I asked? My voice sounded strange to me. Flat and calm. 30 years of emergency response does something to how you process shock. Officer Reyes nodded slowly. Based on intercepted messages, yes. There is also reference to medication. We are not certain of the method, but we believe the intent is to stage an accidental death at sea, file the life insurance claim, and liquidate your estate before any legal challenge can be filed. I sat with that for a moment. I thought about the last time I had seen Dorothy's face in that reading chair. I thought about the tulip bulbs still somewhere underground in our backyard, probably blooming right now without either of us there to see them. What are my options? I asked. Officer Reyes leaned forward. We can arrest them right now. We have enough for conspiracy charges, but a good defense attorney will argue the phone call was venting, not planning. Rich kids with expensive lawyers have beaten worse cases than this one. He paused. Or you board that ship. We wire you. We have 2 federal agents on board with you, and we let them try. If they move against you, we catch them in the act. The case becomes airtight. I looked at the frozen image of my nephew on that screen. This boy who had sat at my kitchen table doing homework, who had called me from college at 2 in the morning because he failed his first accounting exam and thought his life was over, who had cried at my shoulder at Dorothy's funeral and told me we were all each other had now. Set up your surveillance, I said. I'm getting on that ship. 1 hour later, I walked back into the boarding line with a tracking device fastened beneath my left forearm and a frequency transmitter sewn into the lining of my jacket. Officer Reyes had shaken my hand at the door and said, Courage is not the absence of fear. I told him I had just spent 30 years proving that. Marcus greeted me at the gangway with a wide smile and a clap on the back. There he is, the man of the hour. He had never called me the man of the hour in his life. I smiled back and said nothing. The ship was beautiful. I will give it that. 10 decks of polished wood and blue glass, the kind of floating palace Dorothy had dog-eared in a magazine. Our cabins were on deck 8, 2 rooms side by side with a shared balcony. I noticed immediately that my balcony railing faced open ocean. I noticed Dion noticing me, notice it and then looking away. That first night at the welcome dinner, Marcus ordered champagne. A toast, he said, raising his glass to Uncle Walter. To everything you sacrificed for us. To the next chapter. The next chapter. I drank my water and watched his face over the rim of the glass. Dion was quieter than usual. He had always been the one I could read more easily. He kept his eyes on his plate and spoke only when Marcus drew him in. Something was working behind his expression that I recognized as conscience. I had seen that look on young firefighters the first time they did something they were not sure was right. After dinner, Marcus suggested a walk on the upper deck. "Beautiful night," he said. "You can see the stars out here like nowhere else." I said I was tired from traveling and turned in early. I heard the frustration and the pause before he said, "Of course, get some rest." In my cabin, I checked a transmitter and lay down fully dressed. I did not sleep. The next morning, Dion knocked on my door before breakfast. When I opened it, his eyes looked like he had not slept either. He stood in the doorway and said, "Uncle Walter, can we talk?" I stepped aside and let him in. He sat at the small desk chair and pressed his hands between his knees. He opened his mouth twice before anything came out. "Did Mama ever call you?" he finally said. That stopped me. "Your mother? She tried to reach you 3 months ago. She told me she sent 2 letters. Marcus said you never responded because you were still grieving and didn't want contact. He said you had basically decided to cut us all off. I had received no letters from Clara. I had received no letters from Clara. I had received no phone calls." I looked at my nephew then, this boy I had driven to his first day of high school, and I said, "I never got any letters from your mother, son." The color shifted in his face. "He told me she was angry at you, that she blamed you for how the estate was set up, that she said you were leaving us out." Dion rubbed his eyes. "I should have called her myself. I should have called you." The silence between us stretched long and thin. Then he said quietly, "I heard what he's planning, Uncle Walter. I heard the phone call. I heard the phone call. I told him I wouldn't be any part of it. He said I was already part of it just by being here and keeping quiet. He said if I told anyone, he would make sure I went down with him." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "How long have you known?" "About 3 weeks. I nodded slowly. "Did you know about the debt?" "Some of it." "Not how bad." He looked up at me and his eyes were red. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't call you the day I found out. I didn't know how. He's my brother." "I know," I said. "I know he is." That morning I met briefly with the 2 federal agents on board, a man named Agent Torres and a woman named Agent Keller, in a storage room off the service corridor on Deck 3. I told them Dion had come to me. They already knew. They had been monitoring everything. They told me Dion was no longer a target for prosecution. They also told me Marcus had made contact the night before with someone at the port and was moving his timeline up. Whatever he was planning, it was going to happen before we reached Nassau. That afternoon, Marcus found me at the pool bar. He sat down next to me and ordered 2 beers, pushed one toward me. He seemed more relaxed than he had been. Whatever internal countdown he was running had shifted to a shorter interval, and it had loosened something in him. "Uncle Walter," he said, "I have been thinking about your estate planning. Now that Aunt Dorothea's gone, it's really just you. It doesn't make sense for all that to be sitting in trust structures that take years to execute. There are ways to simplify things. Transfers of beneficial interest, direct titling. We could do it digitally in about 48 hours. Save the family a lot of legal fees down the road." I looked at the ocean, and here it was. Plan B. Back up to whatever else he was planning. Get signatures before trying anything physical. Get his name on paper first. I said, "Let me think about it. I'm still getting my head around losing Dorothy." He put his hand on my shoulder. I know, Uncle. That's why I want to make sure everything is in order. For you. So you don't have to worry." I told him I appreciated that. That evening, I stayed on my balcony until the sun went all the way down. I thought about Clara and those letters I never received. I thought about Dorothy's voice saying something in the way Marcus looks at your finances is not the way a nephew looks. I thought about Dion sitting in my cabin with his hands between his knees saying, "I should have called you." I thought about what it means to raise someone, whether it obligates you to protect them from consequences as well as from harm, whether love and accountability have to be enemies. The next morning, we docked at Nassau. Marcus had planned an excursion. A private boat tour, he said. Small group, just us, a local guide, out to a quiet stretch of water off the western coast. Very secluded, he said. Incredible snorkeling. The kind of spot you can't find on the tourist maps. Secluded. Of course, I said it sounded perfect. An hour later, the three of us were on a small motorboat with a man named Clarence, who Marcus had hired through some app on his phone. Clarence had a weathered face and easy smile, and had no idea he was ferrying a retired firefighter wearing a federal tracking device through the clearest water I'd ever seen in my life. We anchored about a quarter-mile offshore. The water was shallow on one side and then dropped suddenly to deep blue on the other. Marcus pointed at the deep side and suggested I try the snorkeling equipment he had brought. He helped me fit the mask, adjusted the straps, his hands moving efficiently. Dion stood at the far end of the boat, not watching. His fists were closed. I leaned over the edge of the boat. Marcus put both hands on my shoulders and said very quietly, almost gently, "I really am sorry, Uncle Walter." I pressed the emergency beacon twice. What happened next took under 4 minutes. A Bahamian Coast Guard vessel that had been sitting 200 yards away under a civilian disguise came alongside. Agent Torres appeared from the cabin of Clarence's boat, where he had been hidden since before we boarded. Agent Keller came over the side rail in a life vest with her badge visible. 2 Bahamian officers were with her. Marcus's hands went rigid on my shoulders. Then they fell away. Nobody moved for a long moment except the water. "Marcus Sullivan," Agent Torres said, stepping toward him, "you are under arrest on federal charges of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder of a United States citizen. You have the right to remain silent." Marcus did not look at me while they cuffed him. He looked at the water. His face had gone somewhere I did not recognize, somewhere past anger and past calculation, to a place that looked almost like exhaustion, like a man who had been running for a long time and had simply stopped. Dion walked to my side of the boat. He did not say anything. He just stood close to me and watched his brother get arrested. And his breathing was the shallow kind of breathing that means you are trying very hard not to come apart. That evening, we were back on the ship. The Bahamian authorities and the federal agents had taken Marcus. Dion had given a full voluntary statement. Agent Keller told me that with the surveillance footage, the transmitter recordings, and Dion's testimony, the case was as solid as she had seen in 12 years. Their words, not mine. And then she said, "We did confirm one more thing this afternoon that you should know about." She handed me a printed phone log. "Your sister Clara has been trying to reach you since February. She was told by your nephew Marcus that you had changed your number and did not want contact. She sent 2 letters to a P.O. box he had apparently set up in your name. She has no idea any of this happened." I held that paper for a long time. That night I asked to use the ship's satellite phone and I called the care facility in Evanston. A nurse answered and I told her my name. I heard her say to someone in the background, "Clara, your brother is calling." There was a long pause. Then my sister's voice, careful and small. "Walter? Clara," I said. "I know it has been too long. I know there are things that need to be said, but I need you to know first that I never stopped caring about you. And I need to tell you what happened to your sons." She did not speak for the first 10 seconds after I finished. Then she said, "I knew something was wrong. I knew it. That boy has been lying to me for years about you. I should have found a way to reach you myself." I said, "We both should have reached harder." She said, "Are you safe?" I told her I was. She cried then, quietly, the way people cry when the relief comes after the fear has been held in too long. And I let her. I told her about Dion, that he had come to me on his own, that he had not been part of it willingly, that he had been threatened and manipulated. She went quiet again for a long time after that. The next morning at sea, Dion knocked on my cabin door again. I opened it, and he looked like a man who had slept maybe an hour and cried through the rest of it. I made him sit down, and I made him drink a cup of coffee I had ordered from room service, and I let him sit in the silence for a while before I spoke. "I am going to tell you what I am going to do," I said. "And I am going to tell you why." He nodded. "I'm going to pay off your brother's debt. Every dollar he owes to those people in Atlanta. Not because he deserves it, because I will not have anyone from my family tortured or killed over money, and because that is what your Aunt Dorothy would have asked me to do if she were sitting in this room right now. She would have said, 'Walter, pay the debt. Then let the law do what the law does. Dion looked at the floor. But paying that debt, I continued, does not mean there are no consequences. Your brother planned my death. He planned it carefully over weeks, and he tried to execute it. He is going to face that in a courtroom, and he is going to serve the time that comes with it. I will not stand in the way of that. That is not cruelty. That is what happens when you choose to do what he chose to do. Uncle Walter. Dion's voice broke. I am not finished. I looked at him steadily. You came to me. It was late, and you should have come sooner, and you know that. But you came, and you told the truth when it mattered. That is the only thing that separates the path you are on from the path your brother is on. Do not forget that. Not ever. He put his face in his hands. I sat across from him and I let him work through it. After a while he said, "What happens now?" For me, I told him I did not know yet. That would take time and honesty between us and probably some difficult conversations with a counselor and with his mother. But I told him the door was not closed. That was the most I could honestly offer, and I believed he understood that. The ship docked back in Miami 4 days later. I walked down the gangway with the morning sun on my face and the ocean behind me, and I stood for a moment at the bottom of the ramp and breathed the way you breathe when you have just walked out of something you are not supposed to walk out of. Agent Torres met me at the terminal. He shook my hand and told me Marcus had been formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. He was looking at a minimum of 12 to 15 years, given the federal nature of the charges, the premeditation, and the recording evidence. Dion had been granted full cooperation status and would likely face a probationary arrangement tied to his testimony. That afternoon, I drove to Evanston. Clara looked smaller than I remembered and stronger than I expected. She was sitting up in the common room of the care facility in a blue cardigan, her gray hair close-cropped, her hands steady on the armrests of her chair. When I walked in, she looked at me for a long moment without moving. Then she opened her arms. We held each other for a long time. We did not say anything for the first 2 minutes. Sometimes there is too much to put into the first sentence, so you just put your arms around someone and let your presence do the work of language. She pulled back and held my face in both her hands the way she used to when we were children, and she was checking my forehead for fever. "You got old," she said. I told her she had too. She laughed. It was Dorothy's laugh, or close to it. The kind of laugh that lives in a family and gets inherited. I had not heard anything like it in 8 months, and it nearly undid me completely. We talked for 3 hours. About Marcus, about the years of manipulation and misdirection, about how he had kept us separated with lies told separately to each of us so that neither could check the other's account, about Dion and what might still be possible for him. About Dorothy. Clara cried when I told her about the tulip bulbs. She said she planted those every fall for 20 years. That was Dorothy. "I know," I said. Before I left, she held my hand at the door and said, "Promise me something. Anything. Don't let Marcus's choices define what we are to each other. He made his. We still get to make ours." I told her I promised. 3 months later, I was sitting on my back porch in Oak Park, watching Dorothy's tulips come up through the soil in the exact colors she had chosen before she died. Red and orange and deep yellow. Stubborn and bright and entirely indifferent to everything that had happened over the winter. My phone buzzed. A letter from the Federal Correctional Facility. Marcus's handwriting on the return address. I set it on the porch table. I did not open it right away. I sat with it for a long time, the way you sit with something heavy before you decide whether you are ready to lift it. Dion called that evening. He was in counseling, 3 sessions a week. He had gotten a job at a logistics company in Chicago. He asked if he could come by Sunday and help me with the yard. I said yes. I still do not know if what I feel toward Marcus is forgiveness or something more complicated and less named. I know what I did was right. I know I chose both mercy and accountability the way the hardest situations almost always demand. I know Dorothy would have nodded at me slowly and said, "You did the hard thing, Walter." That is enough. What I learned through all of this, I will carry for the rest of my life. When someone isolates you from the people who love you, pay attention. That is not protection. That is positioning. When someone rewrites your relationships in private, They are not managing misunderstandings. They are building a wall between you and the people who would warn you. Manipulation does not always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like someone being exceptionally helpful, exceptionally present, exceptionally warm, right at the moment they need something from you. And this. Taking care of family does not mean protecting them from the outcomes of their own choices. The most honest thing love can do sometimes is stand at the door and say, "I will not let you be killed for this debt, and I will not let you escape what you tried to do." Both of those things can be true at the same time. I share this not for drama. I share it because somewhere out there is someone sitting across a table from a person who has slowly, quietly, methodically separated them from everyone who loves them. And I want that person to know what that pattern looks like before it is too late to see it. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone and holding them accountable? Have you ever had someone use your love against you? Tell me your story in the comments. Every voice here matters. If this story reached you today, subscribe to Voices of Uncle Raymond and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Not for the drama, for the warning. Real family does not position itself. Real love does not calculate what you are worth. Remember that.